The days grew tense in the colony. Mira could feel it in the way people moved, in the way machines groaned and sparks flew from damaged panels. Kale had warned them that the corporate faction controlling the planet's resources would not ignore the repairs and improvements they were making. He had told Mira that their actions, though small, were already threatening the faction's control. And Mira, despite her fear, felt a surge of determination. She could not let anyone harm her colony or her brother. One morning, the warning came in the form of a malfunctioning power grid. Sparks flew from the central generator, and smoke filled the air. The colony's alarms rang loudly, signaling the failure. Mira ran toward the generator with Lyre and Orion at her side. Kale was already there, assessing the situation. "It looks like sabotage," Kale said, scanning the broken machinery. "Someone doesn't want us fixing the colony." Mira's heart pounded. Sabotage meant danger, real danger. She looked around at the other children and settlers, seeing fear mirrored in their eyes. But she also saw hope. They had been inspired by Kale and Orion, and now they looked to Mira, who had begun to step into a role of responsibility. "We can fix this," Mira said, her voice firmer than she expected. "We've done it before. We can do it again." Kale smiled, proud of her courage. "Exactly. Let's work together." Mira and Kale moved carefully through the sparks and smoke, guiding the children to safety and repairing broken components. Orion stayed alert, growling softly whenever a dangerous spark or falling metal threatened them. Mira's hands shook at first, but she forced herself to focus. Every step, every action counted. She realized that courage was not about feeling no fear, it was about moving forward. Even when fear existed. By mid-afternoon, the generator hummed back to life. Water flowed, lights flickered on, and the colony sighed in relief. Mira felt a surge of pride. They had survived the sabotage and kept the colony alive. But Kale's face was serious. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The faction will try again, and it could be worse next time. We need a plan." Mira nodded. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had spent so long blaming herself for her mother's departure. But now she understood that she could act, she could protect, and she could lead. She would not allow fear or guilt to hold her back. Over the next few days, Mira worked with Kale to prepare for further threats. She organized groups of children and settlers to monitor the colony's perimeter, taught them basic repairs, and set up warning systems with Kale's guidance. Orion remained her constant companion, sensing danger before it arrived and alerting the settlers. Lyre followed her everywhere, learning from his sister and feeling proud of her bravery. One evening, Mira climbed to the top of a tall ridge overlooking the colony. Kale followed, Orion running ahead to scout the terrain. Mira could see the structures of the faction in the distance, machines and buildings that gleamed faintly in the fading sunlight. She realized that the colony's struggle was larger than she had imagined. It was not just about survival. It was about standing up against those who would exploit others for power. "I'm scared," Mira admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we can't stop them?" Kale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Fear is natural," he said, "but it doesn't control you. Courage is what matters. You've already shown that you can inspire others, that you can act when it matters most. That's the strength that will carry us through." Mira took a deep breath, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She knew that she could not face the faction alone. But with Kale, Orion, and the settlers, she felt a confidence she had never known. Together, they could fight for their home, for their future, and for the truth about her mother. The following day, Mira and Kale discovered that the faction had sabotaged not just the power system, but also the food supply. Several storage units had been tampered with, and some of the crops had been ruined. The colony faced hunger if repairs were not made quickly. Mira's heart sank, but Kale's presence steadied her. "We have to act fast," Kale said. "We can repair what we can, and we'll find a way to grow more. But we need everyone to work together." Mira sprang into action. She divided the children and settlers into groups, assigning each a specific task. She worked alongside them, lifting, repairing, and guiding. Orion stayed near her, alert and protective. as if he understood that her courage now meant the survival of many lives. Lyra helped too, his small hands doing what they could, inspired by his sister's bravery. As the day wore on, Mira felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, but she refused to let it stop her. She encouraged others, reminded them to stay calm, and helped solve problems as they arose. By nightfall, the food storage units were repaired, and new crops had been planted using the colony's remaining resources. It was not perfect, but it was enough to sustain them for now. That night, Mira sat with Kale and Orion under the twin sun's fading light. She felt exhausted, but also proud. She had faced fear, taken responsibility, and led others through danger. She had learned that courage was contagious when she acted bravely. Others found strength too. "Do you think we'll find my mother?" Mira asked quietly, gazing at the horizon. Kel's eyes were calm. "I believe so," he said. "But we must be careful. The faction will not give up easily. They may try to stop us, and we'll need all the courage and wisdom we can gather." Mira nodded. She understood that the road ahead would be dangerous, but she was no longer afraid to face it. She had learned that strength was not about being alone, it was about standing together with those who cared, about using knowledge, courage, and compassion to overcome challenges. Over the next few days, Mira led scouting missions with Kale and Orion, venturing beyond the colony to observe the faction's machines and gather information. She became skilled at noticing small details, broken circuits, unusual tracks, or changes in the terrain. Each discovery gave them clues about the faction's plans, and Mira felt a growing sense of empowerment. One afternoon, Mira discovered a hidden supply depot, stocked with tools, parts, and rations. It had been abandoned, likely because the faction considered it too risky to guard. Mira and Kale quickly assessed the supplies and brought what they could back to the colony. The settlers were amazed, and Mira felt a deep sense of pride. She had found something valuable not just for herself, but for everyone she cared about. As the days passed, Mira's confidence grew. She began to see herself not as a child who had caused her mother's departure, but as a leader, capable of guiding others through danger and uncertainty. She had faced fear, worked hard, and learned that courage and action mattered more than guilt or regret. But the faction had not forgotten them. One night, Mira and Kale detected a small group of machines approaching the colony, likely sent to sabotage or spy on their efforts. Mira's heart raced, but she did not panic. She called the settlers together, organized defensive positions, and prepared for confrontation. Orion ran ahead, scouting the machines and barking to alert them of danger. When the machines arrived, Mira led the settlers with calm determination. They worked together to block paths, repair critical systems, and protect one another. Kale coordinated the defense, and Orion's instincts kept them safe from hidden dangers. Mira realized that leadership was not about fearlessness, it was about making decisions. Staying calm and inspiring others to act out. By dawn, the machines had retreated. The colony was safe, and Mira felt a deep satisfaction. She had faced the faction's threat, guided her people, and proven that courage, determination, and teamwork could overcome even powerful enemies. That morning, Mira stood on a ridge overlooking the colony. Lyra ran toward her, smiling, and Orion barked happily at their feet. Kale joined them, his eyes calm and proud. Mira felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of purpose she had never known before. "We did it," Lyra said, his small hands clapping. "Yes," Mira replied, smiling. "We did it together," Kale nodded. "And this is just the beginning. The faction will not stop, but neither will we. With courage, determination, and teamwork, we can protect this colony and find the truth about your mother." Mira felt a deep sense of hope. She had faced fear, discovered her own strength, and learned that leadership and bravery were not about being perfect. They were about acting with heart and determination. She realized that her mother's absence had taught her an important lesson. Even when life is difficult, humans have the power to stand up, protect others, and create a better future. As Mira, Lyra, Kale, and Orion stood together, looking toward the horizon, Mira knew that the challenges ahead would be difficult, but she was ready. She had discovered courage, she had learned responsibility, and she had found the strength to face anything that came her way. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the horizon, her mother's fate awaited. Mira would not rest until she found the truth, protected her colony, and embraced the courage and determination that Kale and Orion had helped her discover. The days after Kale and Orion's arrival passed quickly. Mira found herself waking earlier than usual, eager to see what the stranger and his dog were doing. She noticed that the colony seemed brighter somehow, even if the buildings were still cracked and the machinery grown under the strain of age. Kale worked tirelessly, but he also made time to speak to the children, to encourage them, and to show them that even small efforts could make a difference. One morning, Mira watched Kale and Orion repairing a water filtration unit. The machine had been broken for weeks, and the colony had been rationing water carefully. Kale lifted heavy pipes, checked gauges, and directed a few of the older children to hold tools and support him. Mira felt a pang of guilt at first, thinking she should have done something sooner. But Kale caught her watching and smiled. "Want to help?" he asked. Mira hesitated. Her hand shook slightly, and she feared she would make a mistake. I can try," she said finally. Kale nodded. That's all anyone can do. As Mira worked alongside him, she realized that mistakes were part of learning. The first pipe she tried to lift slipped from her hands and clanged loudly against the metal floor. She froze, expecting Kale to scold her, but he only smiled gently. "Try again. You'll get it this time." The dog, Orion, stayed near her feet, wagging his tail and letting out soft barks as if encouraging her. Mira laughed, feeling warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. She lifted the pipe carefully this time, Kale guiding her hands, and managed to fit it into place. A small cheer went up from the children watching, and Mira's heart swelled with pride. For the first time in years, she felt that she could actually do something right. After the repair was complete, Kale invited Mira and Lyra to sit with him under a small shade structure he had built. Orion rested beside them, panting lightly from the morning's work. Mira was hesitant at first, but the presence of the dog made her feel safe, and Kale's calm voice made her feel understood. "You've been doing really well," Kale said. "I can see you're brave, and you care about the people around you. That's important." Mira's eyes widened. Nobody had ever said that about her before. "But I'm not perfect," she whispered. "I made mistakes. That's why Mom left." Kale looked at her kindly. "Everyone makes mistakes, Mira. No one is perfect. And your mother, she didn't leave because of you. Sometimes people have to make hard choices. That doesn't mean you were bad." Mira wanted to argue, to say that it was true, that she and Lyra had caused their mother to leave. But something in Kale's eyes made her pause. Maybe he was right. Maybe it wasn't her fault. Over the next few days, Mira started joining Kale and Orion more regularly. She helped repair broken equipment, carried supplies, and even learned to operate a few of the simpler machines. Orion was always nearby, nudging her when she looked uncertain, his warm presence calming her fears. Lyra followed her everywhere, thrilled to be included in the projects. Mira realized that being useful and helping others brought a joy she hadn't known in years. One afternoon, Kale took Mira and Lyra to the edge of the colony, where a small ravine ran between the rocky cliffs. He pointed to the horizon, where strange machines and structures lay abandoned, covered in dust. "This place has secrets," Kale said. "Some of them might explain why your colony has been struggling. But we have to be careful. Not everyone wants the truth to come out." Mira's curiosity sparked. "Secrets? About what?" Kale paused, looking serious. "About your mother, and about the people who control this planet's resources. They might have taken her away, not because of you, but because she opposed them." Mira's heart thudded painfully. Her mother taken? Not because of her mistakes? The thought was both terrifying and hopeful. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions at once, but she only whispered, "Why would they?" "Because power can make people cruel," Kale said simply. "But we will find out the truth. You'll see." Mira felt a mix of fear and determination. If her mother was in danger, she could not just sit quietly. She wanted to be strong, just like Kale and Orion had shown her. For the first time, she believed that she could make a difference. The next day, the colony faced another challenge. A section of the water supply system had collapsed, and the remaining water was running low. Mira knew she could help, but fear and doubt crept into her mind. She remembered her mother's absence and the guilt that had shadowed her for years. But Kel's words echoed in her mind. Mistakes don't define you. Taking a deep breath, Mira ran toward the broken system with Lyre and Orion by her side. She worked alongside Kale, passing tools, holding pipes steady, and carefully following his instructions. Every time she hesitated, Orion nudged her gently, reminding her that she was not alone. Hours later, the system hummed back to life. Water flowed steadily into the colony, and the children cheered. Mira's chest swelled with pride. She realized that her actions had mattered. She had not been perfect, but she had been brave, and she had helped others. That night, Mira lay in her small room, thinking about the day's events. She realized that her fear and guilt had been holding her back for years. Her mother's departure had been painful, but it was not her fault. She could not change the past, but she could shape the future. She could protect Lyre, help the colony, and maybe, just maybe, find her mother one day. As she drifted to sleep, she felt Orion curl up at her feet. The dog had become more than a companion. He was a symbol of loyalty, courage, and comfort. Mira whispered softly to him, "Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping me be brave." Orion barked softly in response, as if he understood every word. The following week, Kale shared more of what he knew about the corporate faction controlling the planet's resources. Mira listened carefully, absorbing every detail. The faction had been taking advantage of the colony's isolation, using advanced machines to extract minerals and energy, leaving the settlers with failing equipment and scarce supplies. Mira felt anger rise in her chest. People were suffering because of greed and selfishness, and her mother had tried to stop it. "We have to be careful," Kale said. "They will not give up their control easily. But together, we can make a difference." Mira nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. She had spent so long feeling powerless and guilty. Now, she felt the first spark of true strength. She realized that courage was not about never feeling fear, it was about acting despite it. Over the next few days, Mira took on more responsibilities. She organized small groups of children to help with repairs, gathered supplies, and even learned to navigate the colony's map to check for dangerous areas. Kale guided her, always patient, always encouraging, and Orion remained at her side, alert and protective. One evening, as the twin suns set, Mira stood on a ridge overlooking the colony. Lyra was beside her, leaning on her shoulder, and Kale and Orion were not far behind. The wind swept through her hair, and Mira felt a quiet strength inside her. She had faced her fears, helped her community, and learned to trust herself. She was no longer just a child who blamed herself for her mother's departure. She was someone who could take action, someone who could make a difference. "I think I'm ready," Mira whispered, almost to herself. "I'm ready to find the truth. I'm ready to help Mom. I'm ready to be brave." Kale smiled, proud of her courage. "That's the spirit. We'll face this together." "You're stronger than you think, Mira." Orion barked once, and Mira laughed. The dog's presence reminded her that loyalty and courage often came in unexpected forms. She realized that help could come from anyone, even a human stranger and his loyal dog. And that sometimes, accepting help was the first step toward true bravery. As night fell over the colony, Mira lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She no longer felt the crushing weight of guilt that had haunted her for years. She felt hope. She felt purpose. And for the first time, she believed that the future could be brighter, not just for her and Lyre, but for the entire colony and somewhere beyond the horizon. The machines and structures that had once seemed broken and lifeless were waiting, quietly holding the secrets that Mira would soon uncover. With Kale, Orion, and her own courage, she knew she could face whatever came next. The colony of Allura had not always been quiet. Once, the streets were filled with laughter, the hum of machines, and the chatter of children playing under the twin suns. But now, a strange emptiness lingered in the air. The buildings still stood, their metal walls gleaming faintly under the sunlight, but life inside was scarce. Power shortages and failing technology had slowed the colony to a crawl. Yet, the hardest part for Mira was not the emptiness or the malfunctioning machines. It was the feeling that she and her brother had done something so terrible, that their mother had left them forever. Mira's hair was tied into a messy braid, and her eyes were always searching for something she could not name. Sometimes, she would hear her brother, Lyre, whispering behind her, "Do you think Mom will come back?" Mira would shake her head quickly, hoping he wouldn't see her tears. "No," she would say softly. "She's gone. We were bad. That's why she left." She had repeated those words so often that they had become her truth. The robot caretaker, named Talon, had been with them since their mother disappeared. Talon was not human, but it had a gentle way of moving, and its voice was calm and steady. It reminded Mira and Lyre to eat, help with chores, and repaired the small machines that kept their home functioning. But it could not fill the empty space left by their mother's absence. Mira often sat by the window, looking at the horizon, wishing she could see a ship coming, carrying her mother back to them. On one particularly hot morning, Mira noticed a small dust cloud in the distance. At first, she thought it was just another sandstorm that swept over the colony now and then. But as it came closer, she could see a figure walking steadily through the dust. Behind him, a large, strong dog ran alongside, moving with both speed and grace. The stranger's presence felt different from the usual visitors or colony workers. There was something about him that made Mira pause, something that made her heart beat faster. "Who could that be?" Lyra asked, tugging at her sleeve. "I don't know," Mira whispered, shielding her eyes from the sunlight. "But I think we should watch." The man stopped at the edge of the colony, kneeling down to pat his dog. The dog barked once and ran ahead, sniffing the ground and looking back to make sure his master was close behind. Mira noticed that the man's clothes were clean, neat, and unlike anything the colonists usually wore. There was a calmness in his movements, a sense of purpose that Mira could not explain. Over the next few days, the stranger began helping around the colony. He repaired broken machinery, taught children how to work together to fix problems, and seemed to know exactly what to do when things went wrong. Mira watched him from a distance, hiding behind walls or peeking around corners. There was a strange warmth in his presence, something that reminded her of how her mother used to smile when she had been proud of her children. And the dog, was brave and smart, always staying close to Mira and Lyra when danger appeared or when heavy winds blew sand across the colony. One afternoon, as Mira was trying to repair a small power generator, she noticed the dog sitting nearby, its eyes fixed on her. You're not going to bite me, are you?" she asked softly. The dog tilted its head and barked gently, wagging its tail. Mira felt a small, unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She realized she had not felt safe or calm like this in a very long time. The man, Kale, noticed her too. He smiled, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel like she could trust him. "Hi there," he said in a voice that was soft but strong. "I'm Kale, and this is Orion." He gestured to the dog, who barked again, as if to greet her. "Looks like you're working hard. Need some help?" Mira shook her head quickly. "No, I can do it myself." But inside, a small part of her wanted to accept his help. She had spent so long believing that asking for help was a sign of weakness. "All right," Kale said with a nod. "But if you change your mind, I'm right over there." That night, Mira could not stop thinking about the stranger and his dog. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would be like if someone cared for her like that, not just her robot caretaker, but a human who saw her as important, who saw her not as a child who had done wrong, but as someone who could do good. She thought about her mother again and felt the familiar sting of guilt. "We were bad. That's why she left." She whispered the words into the darkness, wishing they weren't true. The next day, Kale and Orion returned to the colony, bringing supplies that would help repair the power generators and water filters. Mira found herself watching again, her curiosity stronger than her fear. Kale noticed her watching and waved, giving her a small, encouraging smile. For the first time in years, Mira felt like she could be more than the girl who thought she had caused her mother's departure. Later, Kale noticed Mira trying to lift a heavy piece of metal to fix a broken wall panel. Without hesitation, he came over to help. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said. Mira's hands froze on the metal. She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said that to her before. She was used to the quiet voice of Talon reminding her to be careful, but never a human who saw her strength and still offered help. As Kale helped her, Mira realized that her small successes felt bigger when someone else was there. She could hear her own laughter long buried under years of guilt and fear, and it felt strange, wonderful, and terrifying all at once. Lyra watched from a distance, eyes wide with admiration. He had never seen his sister smile like that, never seen her feel this alive. Over the next few weeks, Mira grew more confident. She began joining Kale and Orion on small repair missions, learning how to use tools and machines properly. The dog stayed close to her at all times, a silent guardian whose presence made her feel braver than she had ever felt. Kale encouraged her gently, teaching her that mistakes were not permanent, that failure was only a step toward learning. One evening, Mira found herself sitting by the edge of the colony, watching the twin suns set. Kale sat beside her, Orion lying at his feet. Mira wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. Finally, she whispered, "Do you think people can change?" Kale looked at her with calm eyes. "Of course," he said. "Everyone can change. Everyone can learn, grow, and do better. What matters is what you do now, not what you did before." Mira felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so long blaming herself for everything, thinking her mother had left because she was bad. But Kale's words, simple as they were, planted a seed of hope in her heart. Maybe she wasn't bad. Maybe she could do something good, something that mattered. From that day on, Mira began to see the world differently. She saw the colony not as a place of failure, but as a home that could be saved. She saw her own mistakes not as proof of her badness, but as lessons she could use to help others. And most importantly, she began to see that help was not weakness, that kindness could be shared, and that hope could arrive in the form of a man and his loyal dog. Talon, the robot caretaker, observed the changes in Mira with quiet approval. It had never known a human child to be so afraid of herself, and yet, Mira was beginning to shine in her own way. Lyra, too, started to smile more often, inspired by his sister's courage and the example of Kale and Orion. But Mira knew that the peace she felt was fragile. There were questions she still could not answer about her mother, about the colony's future, and about why Kale and Orion had come to this remote world. Yet, for the first time in her life, she did not feel entirely alone. As night fell over the quiet colony, Mira whispered a small promise to herself. "I will not let fear control me. I will be brave. I will protect Lyra, and maybe, just maybe, I will find my mother again one day, and somewhere, far beyond the horizon." Kale and Orion rested under the stars, ready to face the challenges that awaited, knowing that their presence had already begun to change this small, fragile world.